Hi, and welcome to this video where we'll talk about how you can use the figure tool to transport your SAP PI PO objects, or actually just do DevOps, as the thing is we want to be able to achieve here. So let's get started. So DevOps, it is a lot more than just doing transports. It is, taking objects, transporting. But when you're doing a PI, there's a lot more that you can actually do in this perspective. You can consider that you do not want to transport the full ICO. You can rename components. There is a large part about this is the parameters that is used across the landscape. You need to approval, and you have some ESR transport also. You want to do testing and documentation of a process, and it obviously this is the way it also works for cloud integration. Before we get started, we need to add some jars to this, but the process should be pretty simple once we get started with this. And we also have some renaming of object, being able to rename object as you transport them in the system. But let's get started. So first off, I've added a new agent here. It's called T, and it's complaining that we need these jars to our class path. Right here, we do not have an easy way to do that, but we will get that as we get along with this. First is we need to create a landscape here, and we do it for PO, and this is the binary one. We will DevOps. We'll use the integrated transport management. It's a binary. We can select whether or not we want naming validation. Do we have approval on? Who can approve this? And who can import it? We also have an restrict access that says it's only a specific users that can do this. And we will now add the agents to here. And we can actually add the same agent twice if we wanted to copy those objects. So we'll do DC5 T75, and as you recall here, so this is not the composite landscape as we had with CPI. This is just the part of the composite landscape. Here we can say if we have some predecessors and successor, this is useful for licenses perspectives. And here we have the parameter replacement. So here, this is here we can add SAP ERP dev to SAP ERP test. This allows us to replace these parameters on the fly globally. And here we have options to exclude objects if we do not want to have them in here by object type patterns or types, and we can use allow only if they match this, and then we have deny criteria also. And if we here look at some of the objects, we have all the deer, and we can also, so we can exclude ESR objects if we are doing this transport, and it depends on what you want to set up if you want that also. But now we want both. Let's just do that. We press save up here, and now we have a landscape. Okay, so we will go to our PI dev system. We will select an ICO. Let's take the one here where we have created some test cases for. So we'll select this one. We will assign it to a ticket. Oh, before I actually get started, I need to also synchronize here. So you obviously need to synchronize, have all the artifacts in this the system, so it knows what to compare, etc. We could probably have done it without, but we'll just run into some problems. So obviously, once you add a new agent, make sure you synchronize so everything is up to date and you know what it will be like. This is a much smaller agent, so it will be pretty quick. But let me just pause. So yeah, it took a short minute to synchronize everything on this system. And we can see this ICO is actually already up here. But let's try it again. So we select it here. We select the ICO here. We just select assign to ticket. Demo 6. We'll select the landscape. Right now we only have one here. That's good. We can add the geo number or search now, whatever, here. And now we have a transport. In here we can assign what kind of objects we want. We attach all the different objects, specific one, or we just add all the dependent objects. That is by far the easiest. If there's part of this that you do not want, you can go in here and you can select, hey, let's just exclude this one. So you'll detach objects, delete the links, or detach only. So there is options to filter out some of these things. So sometimes you don't want the repository, so you will just add it here, select all, and then delink these. But for now, let's just keep them so we can see everything is going on. Alright, so we can look up test cases, and here we have a test case we already created. We can select it, we can run it, and this is the DevOps part. So just creating a landscape, and now we can actually reuse all our test cases that we have for this. There seems to be some kind of a problem with some unfinished result in it. There's one message that we did not receive. See if it fetched it. So now we fetched everything, it's a success. Well, we have not made any changes to the object, so that is expectable. Then we'll try to create the transport, and this will fail because we do not have all of these jars in our leaps. So we'll just say download this one, download, 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 and say close. So now we have downloaded all of these files. We will open our bat file, the place where we're running the tool, and just say Control-C. And in our downloads folder, we now have these 3 objects. We copy those. In here, we need to create a libs folder in the place where we run the FGAF tool. We paste these one in here. We press run again, and this will then start up the process. And we can see here we are using this libs folder, so we know that it has some extra artifacts when it is dealing with these things. Starting up. So let's try again. So now this was successful. And we can see it created 3 different transport because there are 3 different software component versions in this specific iFlow, which obviously makes it a little more complicated to go through. So normally I would go through all the ESR components manually and send it to approval. And I cannot approve now. We'll just enable that just to make the process a little simpler. But as you saw with PI, I would then need to go through all of these different scenarios, create them, and approve them. So we need to have everything approved before we can go in and approve it. So here it is obviously not as fun, so we can select here, we can do comparison here, we can see if there are any differences between these objects. And obviously I don't think that there is any on these. So we have the last one here that's in progress. It is in this is created. This is sent to approval and approve it. So the last thing is the directory. So this is obviously where we need to do some manual configuration. And this is where all the fun things happen. First off, we have a sender component. So the ICO is this one. And that means if we select this as the sender component, so let's select here, we can then see what this item is in the landscape. And we can use the scenario mapping. So we do have option to use pre-delivered content for this mapping, but we can also create a new one, training, and so we have here the option to inherit from source or inherit from target. So we do have option here to rename objects, and we can see here it determines that this do not exist on the system. If we now look at this component that it's complaining, so what is it it's complaining about? That it says here that there's an empty parameter that's called password that we need to fill in. I think this is also because we do have a renaming of the object, or it has never been transported before. So there is two filters here, something that has been changed that we can use here, and we can actually see here we need this password here. Daniel test. We also have option here to select non-transportable, etc. So it is really easy to filter, find the ones that you actually want to consider. So let's show all non-transportable one. So these are all the non-transportable one. So we do have a URL here, and let me just try to replace this globally. So we'll go here, we will select, go back to our landscape, localhost 9, and here in our transport landscape. So when you are creating this, you may need to go back and forth between these and update all of these settings. So the idea is that you go here, you say, okay, now we have this one, and this one is then we have prod of testing. Now we can save this. So here we can search if this value exists, replace it with this one inside of the content. So now we have done this. If we press save up here, so first off, the warning was disappeared, and if we look at all non-transportable, we can now see that without us needing to add any values here, it figured out we needed to use this ID. This just makes it so much easier for us to set up and remember hosts. So probably not for this one, but for ERP backend hosts, these kind of things, it's really easy just to insert them into the list, and then you don't need to worry about them anymore. We can also see modules configurations. These are the FIGF modules that is being added to this. We just press save here, and yeah, we have this inherit from source and inherit from target that we can switch on between and figure out which one makes most sense for us to be using for the scenario. So now we can validate, and we can see everything is good. Let's also try to rename one of the component here. So let's try to rename this ERP system to ERP 5. And then all that would mean that if we look at the ERP communication channel, it is now using ERP 5, and it complains we need to enter the password for this user because we don't have this anymore. We'll just enter some value here, and we press save. We can also deny transport of the object. So there is option to actually go and say, hey, we know this is a crazy object, don't transport this. The last thing we want to check out is the ICO, and here we have, we can see the parent, all the different objects that it is using, so we can easily go back and see how they are being manipulated in landscape. We can see it does not exist yet on the source target system. And then here we have the different components, source and target landscapes that it is using. I don't think we can actually rename these objects, and that would not make sense. So it works. No, we cannot. So it will just use the components we have here. We can enter the description, and then we have the option down here to ignore or exclude certain parameters. So we can exclude it. So there's a small option with the exclude include, which is whether or not it should use the data from existing integrations. But let's see here. Save the changes. We have here changes overview. I don't think that makes so much sense, but we can see the header is mapped from this to this. We have this receiver interface that is excluded. So you can see some of these different scenarios that is being configured here. So as a user, I can also check this changes overview here. Here we are going to give you an insight about the changes, and this is obviously more if you have already transported, you're just making modifications to it. You can see quite a number of different parameters in here. The other cool is this parameter report. There is a small bug. This is fixed in the new one. This would, just as with the PI one, it will give you oversight or information about all the different artifacts that exist, and thereby you can see which URLs and host names that you are using and how they relate. Yes, so download parameter support, check it out, see what is being used here, and then it is just sent to approval and approve this setup. So we do on the transport level here have an option to see what's going on, see what is being transported. For ESR for now we do not have batch import. So if you go here to my actions, we can see that there's 3 items that can be imported, and we can scroll out and we can see this is the directory one. So from here, if we have multiple directory imports, we can transport them. Unfortunately, we don't have that option for ESR objects. So yeah, it does not exist there. But we can do it from here. We could also do it on the inside of the object. Now we can select whether or not we want to activate the change list, and let's not activate this. It needs all the other ones imported. So let's do that first. So obviously, sometime if you do make some more modifications, you need to figure out what these data is. And here we're excluding too much, so maybe let's just go back and okay. So I went back into the component for this ICO here. And it was not possible to do it on the transport, but on the ticket, up here in the ticket, we did have the ICO as one of the objects. ICO. Here in the ICO, we do have a link here to this object here, and here I could then include these ones. So obviously, you need to be cautious when you're doing these kind of changes with too many objects and going through making too much muss. So we now have this one ready to be imported. And let's see, we'll just try to activate. If you skip it, you can see there's a change list and go through and see all the changes that have happened. And this is a good sign to check out who has made which changes and why. And now we can see everything that has been created here. We can roll back this change if we do not want to do this. Let's see if the parameter reports now work now. And we do have the process trace here. That's a good way. We can use the download trace here. This will also give us some extra insight about what has done if we need to export this to some other location. And we can do the comparison about here, checking what objects has been created. This is a new one. Here's a different one. We have the ICO here. It's a new ICO, so no changes to it. And already exists, so it knows some of the objects already exist. So all in all, making it a lot easier. And let's then try the documentation here. So let's look at this is the landscape object in the QA system. We do have the option here to create scenario documentation. This will show us this this transport that has taken place here. This is the ICO, all the different objects that's a part of this transport, the parameters, etc. So we have all of the information that is documented in an Excel or document here we can use for our scenarios. We could obviously also do it for the message mapping and see what is going on. On the landscape level here, we also do have this this object to see what is it actually for some changes that we have been affecting by this. So we can see here this have assigned some tickets on. We can see the data types and etc. for these scenarios, making it a lot easier for us to manage the integration and remember why we made a change at some point in time. And this is really a good way to understand, okay, why was something changed and who made this specific change. And yeah, if we had multiple revisions, we could also do comparison of these objects here. So you can also do the create a landscape on the same system. That makes sense if you just want to rename some objects or a IQ that should be using a different system. So if you're doing an S4 HANA project, then this makes a lot of sense and will simplify some of the processing that you're setting up. So this is what can be done with the tool, automating some of the different steps when you're transporting your integration, documenting what's going on, and setting up and having separate approval processes for these things. And obviously you need to learn the tool, figure out what kind of problems you can run into when doing too many unsanctioned modifications. So I hope this is interesting. You've learned a lot about how you can actually automate your processing and your transport processes using the FIGAF tool. So thanks for watching.